You are now listening to On Air with Lewis Hunter.
Hi there, welcome back to On Air with Lewis Hunter, where we go into the ins and outs of celebs, professionals, and behind the scenes workers of your favorite movies and film. Join me as we go into their lives to find out what it's like to be one of them. Today, I am joined by Phil Reynolds. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's good to have you on.
Lovely to be here. It's lovely to be here. Have we've made it to the new year?
Exactly.
Surprisingly.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy New Year to you too. I'm hoping that it's going to be slightly more joyous for the next 12
fingers
months.
crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, than it's been for the previous 12 months. So it's lovely. There's my alarm going on, but sure, we'll keep that in, sure, and we'll show that this is the actuality of life.
Yeah.
And podcasting. So we're good.
Yeah. Hope everyone else listening here has had a good New Year and is starting the new year well. So, Phil, for people that don't know who you are or about yourself, do you want to tell them a bit about yourself?
Well, I've been working in broadcast media since 2007. I started off in BBC Northern Ireland in that very year as a runner, and basically banged on doors for the majority of that time. It was the most unbelievable experience working for BBC Northern Ireland and working in radio, television, and online. So it was seen to be multi-platform from what I did, and I was a bit of a rabbit in headlights because I didn't know what an OB was, which is obviously an outside broadcast, but I didn't know what cutting audio meant or what cutting television tapes meant. But because you have to hit the ground running on a live broadcast or a live broadcast environment, you have to learn as you go along, and that learning process is now. It's not in 2 hours time or 2 weeks time. You have to just basically learn, and I took that with me throughout the journey. I moved to London in 2014, which was meant to be for 3 months, but then that got slightly extended for 3 years. And I then moved to Manchester, where I'm based now, and I've worked across a multitude of different programs. I still do radio, I still do 5 Live in Manchester, and working more in factual entertainment, and essentially starting off as a runner in 2007 and then bringing all my experience with me from regional programs from BBC Northern Ireland to network, and then working on some of the biggest shows on television has been unbelievable. But I've always wanted to be a presenter. I've always wanted to work in television and be an actual television presenter. And the more I worked in television, the more I always wanted to never do that. I was like, I really enjoy the behind the scenes side of things, of writing presenter scripts and writing briefs and writing biogs and basically making the program happen from a production point of view. But from the more you work, and certainly for me, the more I work in broadcast television, I would never ever want to do television as a presenter. It's so funny because that's where I wanted to be when I started out in college. Then I obviously did loads of radio and stuff as well, but I'm really happy doing what I'm doing at this side of things because I'd be very fortunate with the programs that I've worked on. I get to work with very, very high-end talent who are exceptionally talented at what they do, and I'm just happy just to hide behind the camera and I'll do it from that side of things. So it's been a bit of an unbelievable journey so far. I started in BBC Northern Ireland 2007. It was January 2007. So if you do the maths, that's next month. So that's quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
All things considered, but it's been a really good journey so far. I'm still learning and I'm still climbing the ladder, but so far so good.
Yeah, sounds very interesting. Now, what I sort of wanted to know was, why did you choose to get into this field? Like, what made you think this is why I want to do it? This is what I want to do.
I'll tell you exactly why. Both my parents come from a very professional suit and tie background, and I said to my mum that I wanted to study business and I wanted to work in business of some sort. I wanted to work in the bank, or I wanted to work in a very fancy office and wear a suit every day. And I did work experience, I went to Bangor Tech and I studied business, and I passed it all, which is quite ironic because I had halfway through I had no interest in wanting to pursue it any longer, but I never stop halfway through things. So I did work experience in what was the Woolwich. So that would be Barclays Bank now, I think. And I did work experience in there to sort of see how the bank is run away from the sort of the counter and where customers don't see. And I wore a suit for a week and I absolutely hated it. Like I hated it. The thought of having to constantly fix my tie and wear a blazer and I always say school trousers, but essentially it's just a suit. I was like, no, I don't want to do this. I just no. And from there, sort of torturing DJs to go to gigs and being in around their circles and getting to meet producers and other presenters. I thought this is quite exciting. They all wear ripped jeans and Nike Air Max and have a lovely time and get to go to loads of festivals and make really good radio shows. And from there, I passed the business course, but that I was just like, no, I'm sort of done here. And I went and had a look around Bangor Tech Radio, and I explained to the person who was then in charge of it how much I wanted to do it. And he said, because I'm so enthusiastic and because I really want to do it, that if I was able to get a Northern Irish celebrity to be on the radio show, that he would let me do it, which is essentially let me do it 2 years in advance because you only get to do it at the end of the course. So I approached a couple of people from Northern Ireland and they said no, which is fair enough. They've got other commitments or they don't want to, or the time doesn't work for their schedules and stuff. But I asked Fergie, who you and I both know very well, and I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason, and perhaps this is why. He was in Australia on tour, and I asked his agent, and I had no interest or no experience in how to contact agents or how to contact DJs, but just sort of went with it and thought, right, I'll do a bit of blagging here, and I tried my best and it worked. And he said yes. And his agent says he's currently in Australia, but he'll be back in 2 weeks and he's going to phone you. And I was like, yeah, that's the politest way I think I've ever been fobbed off in my life.
You didn't think nothing was going to happen from it?
No, and a true man of his word. He texted me and he told me who it was. And this is before like WhatsApp and stuff, so it was just a SMS message. So you couldn't the way put the number into WhatsApp and see if it actually is him. And he texted me and he said, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting a chat with you. And we were supposed to go to Kelly's in Lush to do the interview, and I brought all the stuff with me. But it was his first time playing in Lush, and we sort of should have known that this was probably going to go a bit ski with. And due to getting overexcited on a few beers, he wanted to do it on another occasion. So I thought to myself, right, okay, this is not, I've come so close, but yet so far. And he got back to me and we did the interview and it was amazing. And from there, I knew that this is where I needed to be. And like these radio presenters are getting paid for talking. Like, it can't be that hard. And from the moment and the hour I did that interview, I just sort of fell in love with it. And I banged on the door of all the radio stations in Northern Ireland. This was pre BBC Radio Ulster / BBC Northern Ireland. And I sent them demos and all. They were like, oh, this is great, and I'll come back to this in 15 years. So that was sort of going nowhere. And I remember sending a demo to the then head of a radio station in Northern Ireland, a commercial radio station in Northern Ireland. And his response to me was, we're currently not looking for any new presenters. So I sort of thought to myself, right, well, you haven't listened to the audio. I could be the next Terry Wogan or the next Jerry Anderson. Not saying that I am.
Yeah.
But if you're in that position, surely you should at least listen to it and say, I really liked what you did there, or you could have done this better, or whatever it was. And we'll maybe check in 6 months' time. So I sort of took that. I was like, whatever. And there's so many no's. You get so many yeses in the industry that you and I are involved in. And for every no that you get, you will eventually get a yes.
Yeah.
And I'll always remember things like that, like, oh, we're not looking for new presenters, or people who just don't reply to emails. And be that as it may, I always wanted to work at the highest level. So maybe that all happened for a reason. And now I'm working in network, and that's that's the level that I expect my career to stay at for Touchwood for the foreseeable future. So on the back of going to college, I then got the job in Radio Ulster. I then moved to London 7 years later, then moved to Manchester, and here we are in Belfast, enjoying Christmas and what is now the new year, and then we'll get back at it in a week or so.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned about working in radio and getting through the door in radio. What's your experience in radio? Like, what do you think of it? Do you enjoy it? Like, what's the whole process behind it?
My experience in radio has been, it's been unbelievable. I've worked with, so in my eyes, the best journalists in Northern Ireland when I worked in Radio Ulster, and also getting to work with the likes of Jerry Anderson, who, if you ask your mum and dad about, and your aunties and uncles, they'll tell you something funny about him. The fellow was just a genius, and getting to work with him when because his radio show came from Derry Monday to Thursday, and then he would come from Belfast on a Friday, and everyone was just so excited to see him every Friday, because he would just come in and he would just fill the room full of joy, and he was just such a talent. No script. He didn't know what music he was going to play. He would walk in just before 10:30 and just get on with it for an hour and a half. And you pick up things from that. I wasn't just working on the show, like I was watching his mannerisms, watching his presenting skills, and watching how he put things together and made it happen. But working for Radio Ulster as well, I was working on the tail end of the Troubles, I guess, as well, where things were still happening. And you're working in an environment where the subject matter is very heavy, so you have to adapt yourself accordingly. When you're working on a program like Hugo Duncan, where it's all laughs and a bit of crack, which it always was, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, or working with Jerry Anderson, or working on different programs, then you're in the newsroom perhaps that evening or the next day, and there's a lot of different styles of program that you have to change yourself to get used to when you're working on such a heavy subject matter. But it was unbelievable, and like radio just means so much to people. And a radio presenter told me once, and it really stopped me in my tracks, where he said, "You see that clock on the wall?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "That's me coming into somebody's house. That might be the only voice they hear that day. They might only switch the radio on for my show. So I have a huge responsibility." And their radio presenters do, and it's the warmth that they bring and the joy that they bring that people, you don't necessarily have to write all over social media that you're listening to something to enjoy it. So that being said, there are probably so many people who listen to radio programs across the board, who rely on them at 10:30 every day or at 1 o'clock every day. They just kick back and enjoy, listening to a radio show that is going to maybe bring a bit of fun, because we're living in unprecedented times. Like, we're now in 2022 and the world has just stopped. Like, it's been stopping and starting and stopping and starting for the last, nearly 3 years. And we never thought this was going to happen in a lifetime. It's just going on and on. So even like your podcast, like, people listen to this now, it's going to bring a bit of crack and a bit of joy and a bit of fun. And that's the most important thing, I guess, about radio and about podcasts, are that people are listening for a bit of cheer and for a bit of fun in the times that we find ourselves in.
Yeah. I think it's quite important to have that, because, as you said, sometimes it's the only voice people will hear in a day. So you've got to make sure that you give them something that's worth listening to.
Absolutely. And make it a little bit unique and a little bit different, and push the boundaries as well. That's why when you had asked me to go on your podcast, I was like, absolutely, because you're doing something different. You're doing something that other people are maybe thinking of doing, but you have done it. You've got it over the line, and I wish you all the luck and success with it, and hopefully this will be the start of a really exciting journey for you.
Hopefully. I appreciate that very much. Now, a question I was thinking about whenever I was researching India, I was thinking, he's doing radio. Like, why would you change career path towards producing? Like, what pushed you for that?
Change career path from radio to television.
Yeah.
I think I'd sort of done enough radio at that stage. It was 7 years of every day working on regional radio, and I just wanted to try it. I just wanted to see how it would go. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean London isn't for everyone, and it doesn't always work out for everyone. But I was watching all these shows, and I was always thinking it would be amazing to be a part of them, to work with presenters who I would look up to, like Dermot O'Leary being one that I did a presenting masterclass with on Cinemagic, who I think are amazing. And then actually getting to work with him was unbelievable. But you see, when you move to London, like, you have to have all your ducks in a row. You have to be in a position where you can put a deposit down for somewhere to live. You need to make sure that you have enough to sort of survive, to get tubes and do practical things every day. And it's not just clicking your fingers and saying, right, I'll head up to Oma here and I'll work here for 6 months, and I'll drive home every night to my mum's house. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So it was something that I just wanted to try, and I was having so much of a lovely time. It just went on for it's now 2022. So I left BBC Northern Ireland 2014. So we're now in our 7th year, and it's just going really well. And I don't ever want to just work in one genre. I want to be able to work on a wealth of different content. So nothing's getting stagnant. You're not getting pigeonholed. You're not getting a feeling where, oh, I've done this for enough, maybe I want to stop and do something else. Because working in telly is amazing, and every day is a dream for me, and I'm very fortunate for what I do. But it is very stressful as well. You've got a responsibility when millions of people are watching the content that you and your team are putting together. But once you see it go out, and you hear that the bosses are happy and the channel are happy and the figures are good, well, that makes it all worthwhile. And the buzz of watching your program go out, that maybe you've worked on for 6 months and it's not a live program, and it's only going out at the end of the year or the start of the summer, and you watch it, it's a proud moment. It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah. Now, what was your first big job in the industry?
So, like, every program I've watched on in my eyes has been really big, from stuff that I made last year that is still in production. So can't really say a lot about that, because
the Dragon's Den, stuff like that.
I haven't yet worked on Dragons, mate.
Okay.
But I would love to. I've worked on so many different programs that there's still some being on the tail end of being in the final stages of production, which will go out last year. But I guess, like, the biggest job in my career to date, and the like, of every job I've done has been so exciting, and it's been an amazing experience. But working on All or Nothing with Manchester City was above and beyond the most amazing experience of my life. Like, I was talking to one of my mates who I worked on the program with over Christmas, and we were joking about he had sent me a picture of us out with the players at Christmas. They invited us to their Christmas party. I had said to him that I don't think we and this is 3 years down the line, I don't think we genuinely realized how fortunate we were to work on that program.
Yeah.
Like, it was amazing. I've made friends for life at Man City who are involved in the first team, or they're involved at the front of house for the first team, or whatever it may be, or they're part of Manchester City television. Like, I've just made so many friends, and we all keep in touch. And because we're in Manchester, we do see each other now and then. And like, I am a huge football fan, but I'm also a huge Man United fan. So when
big conflict there.
Yeah, slightly. When you're working with Manchester City and they're having the season of their lives, and you're supporting the team across the road, it's quite hard to to accept that. But however, when I'm working on the program, Man United don't pay my wages. I'm there to do a job and do the job to the best of my ability and make something that is going to be groundbreaking. And that program has never been attempted before. It's obviously now being done. It's been made with Spurs and it's currently being produced with Arsenal. But this was the first time that this has been attempted in the Premier League. And it was just incredible. I worked with so many talented directors of photography, so many talented directors, producers, researchers. It was unbelievable, and getting to go to like all the Man City games. Like I was there when United beat City 3-2. City could have won the league against United. So I was like, I'm standing on the touchline here watching my team be dismantled by their biggest rivals, and I'm making a documentary about it. So it was quite funny, but working on that was just a dream, and I would never have got to do that if I had have just stayed in Northern Ireland. And that was why the risk was worthwhile, to essentially move to Manchester to experience television up north.
Yeah. Now, how did you land the Man City job?
I heard about it, and one of my friends had told me about it, and I got in touch with the execs on the program, and they invited me for a chat. And I forgot about it, to be honest. I forgot about it because I went for the chat and it was nearly 2 weeks down the line and I hadn't heard anything. And I was like, all right, well, that hasn't worked out. Let's move on to the next one. And I just got an email one afternoon saying that they'd love to have me on. And you can imagine I was absolutely vibrating. I was bouncing off the walls. So from there came, a year of making a program with essentially then the best team in the Premier League, and getting to the stage where you had the trust of the players when you were walking in their first team headquarters. Like that was their sanctuary where there wasn't any press allowed, there was no cameras, and then all of a sudden we turn up, you know what I mean, and we're like in their faces 24/7. We're going to their houses, we're traveling in their cars, we're going to the games with them. But it was amazing, and they were some of the nicest guys I've ever met. Like the first team players that we met on a daily basis were just so lovely. And I remember coming towards the end of the season, Argentina were over to play Italy. I don't even know why they were there. They were playing a random friendly in the Etihad in Manchester, and Lionel Messi was with them. So I don't usually bother talent. I just keep it solely professional and just let them crack on, and I do my job and they do whatever they have to do. But when you're in the same room as Lionel Messi, you're not going to let that slide. And I remember asking him for a photograph and he replied CC, and we got a photograph, and I thanked him very much. And he said something like, very, very polite and very gently spoken, "You're very welcome," and off he popped.
Because he doesn't really speak English, so
yeah, exactly. And when you're getting to stand beside Lionel Messi, I was just like, this is, because like when you're halfway through that documentary and the things I got to do on it, and then I'm getting to stand beside Lionel Messi, is just
nothing that can top it. Like,
no, it's unbelievable. Because I remember I met George Best in the Old Inn in Crawfordsburg when I was working in the bar in there, and that was obviously well before camera phones. So
signatures.
Yeah, it was like a dodgy piece of paper on a bar mat. But getting to see Messi and getting a photograph was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
100%. Now, is there any moments in the show that was like maybe filmed or done that didn't make the cut, like heated moments or talks with like the manager and a player, etc.? Like, is there anything that you think should have made the cut that didn't?
Yeah, there's loads of stuff. Like we film for hours and hours and hours, days and months and weeks, and you're filming hours of footage, like literally hours for a few seconds. But the way it was put together and the way it was produced, it was absolutely outstanding, and I don't think that it could have been done any better. It was in my eyes absolutely outstanding.
Yeah. Now, what were the circumstances of the show? Like, were you upping personnel on the pitch, at the sidelines? Were you at the training place, or were you sort of like more backstage in a way?
No, I was everywhere. no day was different. We could have been out with a fan filming them at their house, getting ready for a game, or we could have been at the Etihad at 6 a.m. when we were getting shots of the ground opening up for a match that day or that night, or we could have been at a press conference with Guardiola. We could have been at a signing with Vincent Company or Sergio Aguero. We were sort of embedded everywhere, and as I say, every day was different, and what we would do on a Tuesday would have absolutely no relevance to what we would do on a Wednesday, where we could be getting ready for a Champions League game or Carabao Cup game. Like, because City were in contention to win 4 trophies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were all talking about the quadruple and how they were going to win 4 trophies, and that was the footage that we were trying to cover throughout all of that. But we did have some fans who would come in to be interviewed, so I would interview them at the first team training ground, and then we would put that in, sort of pepper that throughout the documentary. So all in all, like, no day was the same, and you could have ended up anywhere throughout the whole of the program. Like, when you're getting your access all areas lanyards, and you're going to the game, and you're able to walk in the tunnel, and like, some of those tables at the hospitality suites cost upwards of £25,000 a table. Like, I was experiencing things that I'll probably never see again in my life. And
Yeah.
I'm just himself from Bangor, you know what I mean? And getting to see all these high rollers, it was unbelievable. I think one of the most amazing things was when City were doing the lifting of the trophy, and Noel Gallagher was there with one of his mates. I can't remember who his mate was, but he's the guy who's always seen with him. I think his name's Scully, I think.
Not too sure.
But he was there, and we were just sort of standing, watching City lift the trophy, chatting to Noel Gallagher, and I was like, "All right, how are you? What's the crack?"
Yeah, it's a weird world, like.
And then I got an Uber home. But no, it was class. I would love to do it again. I would genuinely love to do it again.
Fingers crossed. You get Arsenal, whoever up next, maybe Man United. Fingers crossed.
You never know. You never know.
United could do with it, to be honest with you.
They could. United could do with a lot of things.
That's very true. I have to agree on that one. Now, did you get the work with the likes of Pep Guardiola, or was it more sort of just looking at him in a way? Like, if you got him in, like, did you get the chat with him, say, this is what we're going to do this day, this is what we're going to do this day? Because obviously, Pep Guardiola, as a United fan, I still have to say, he's like the best manager in the world.
Pep is one of the nicest guys that I've ever met in my life as a football manager. He is he is what he is on camera.
Yeah.
Like, he's quite frightening as well. If you've watched the documentary, he is.
Yeah,
he is
sometimes.
he is quite frightening. But like, we would do lots of stuff, in the first team training ground, or we would go to one of his press conferences, or we would follow him in Manchester, or away in Europe, or we would go to Barcelona, to where the players go when they're injured, to get treatment. It could be anywhere, but it came to the stage where we obviously had the trust of the team and the players,
Yeah.
where we just cracked on, but we solely respected that they're not there just to kick a ball around. Like, they're there to win the league. They're there to win the Champions League, to win the Carabao Cup, to win the FA Cup, to win the Charity Shield. So as close as we were in their faces, there was still the boundary of respect, and I think that's why it works so well.
Yeah. Now, sort of moving away from this topic again. Now, about a year ago or so, I believe it was, you started your podcast. Now, what made you decide to start the podcast?
I was actually thinking about half an hour ago on my Facebook memories. It came up that it was in the paper today with Norman Cook, Fatboy Slim. And I was like, wow, oh my God, it was a year ago. I wanted to do it because we were all furloughed from work, and I for one didn't know what furlough even meant, and then when it came round to it, we were essentially being paid to sit at home. So I didn't know when I was going to see my mates again. I didn't know when I was going back to work. I didn't know when we were allowed to go to the shop. Like, this is being told you had to stay indoors by the government. Like, it's like some sort of apocalypse.
Mhm.
And I had done a bit of work in the garden. I had painted the fence. I painted the bathroom and the spare room. And I was like, right, okay, I could really do something here that's a bit more creative, because I'm running out of number one, I was running out of paint, and I was I was running out of rooms to paint. So I'd always wanted to do something like this. And the reason why it was the perfect timing was because everyone knows who the celebrities were, the A-list talent in the world. Everybody knows who they are. Jamie Dornan, Fatboy Slim, Gary Lightbody, Fergie, Judge Jules, Paul Van Dyke. Everyone knows who they are, but they don't know what they do during lockdown. They don't know what they do when the world stops and shuts down. Like, I didn't ask Jamie Dornan, about his wife never watching 50 Shades of Grey, because everyone knows it. She's never watched it.
Yeah.
Or Gary Lightbody, chasing cars, went to number one in 700 countries. They're just repetitive questions that those two guys both get asked all the time. So I wanted to do it solely on the purpose of, again, everyone knows who these people are, but they don't know what they do in a lockdown. Like, what are you doing now? Like, what are you doing right now? Where is Gary Lightbody? Like, where is Jamie Dornan? Like, what are they doing? And it just sort of snowballed from there. I did one podcast with Gary Lightbody, which was the first one, and I got so much positive feedback. Like, it ended up in the papers. I think it was in the Red Tops in England. It was on Belfast Live, and it was all over the socials. And like, I obviously have produced radio for years, but I've never produced a podcast. So I didn't know how to do the branding, how to master the audio, how to do any of that. But my friend who owns Juice FM in Belfast, he liked it so much that he offered me a slot on his schedule, which I was sort of blown away with. And he mastered all the audio for me, and I would cut it myself, and I got all the artwork done. And it became something that was just part of my week. Because we were furloughed for so long, I was doing a podcast nearly once a week.
Yeah.
And then when things started to move again, the wheels started to turn, it wasn't feasible to do it every week, because we were sort of starting to go back to work, or, people were fed up of the word lockdown, which is why we started the podcast with a different name, Celebs and the Average Joe, because I was approached by a television production company who really liked the first lockdown podcast series, but people just got bored of the word lockdown. And I think that every time you mention that word at that stage, it's just bringing people back to doom and gloom, where they may have forgot about lockdown for half an hour. So I then went on to the second podcast, and it was as big a success as the first one was. And it was from my kitchen table. There was no glamorous studio. It was a microphone, my laptop, and my kitchen table.
Yeah.
And away we went. Like, I didn't know if any of the talent would say yes. Like, I didn't know, but it came to a stage where it was just like a bit of a wee game, bit of a waiting game. And like, loads of people came back to me and just said, yeah, they would love to do it, because they've obviously heard an episode or somebody's told them about it. And it was just a bit of fun to bring a bit of cheer, to everyone in sort of unprecedented times. And I guess if it had like really fallen on its arse and nobody had to listen, then it wouldn't have continued with it for so long. But it went so well that we just went with it. And my mates are texting me going, so who's on the podcast this week? It was class.
Yeah.
It was
It's the best feeling whenever your mates or whatever are saying how they love it.
And there's so many people that like, even my mate's dad. I was talking to him on Christmas Eve, and he had said, "Oh, I love the old podcast. See the one with the hairy bikers, or the one with Carol Baskin."
Yeah, you're like, what is happening?
Yeah. So I know exactly. And there's so much, like, I've listened to so much radio, and people are presenting the radio show saying that was the Kaiser Chiefs. Coming up next is the Killers. But to me, that's just talking in between records. Like it's nothing really that exciting.
Yeah.
And I tried to make the podcast different where I didn't have any questions, and my question essentially came on the back of the last answer that the guest gave me. We were talking about random stuff, like Jamie Dornan talking to him about United, talking to him about going for a pint in the Crown Bar on a Tuesday night, and if he wears a disguise.
Most random stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but it worked
Yeah.
because
100%.
they're so used to being asked the same boring, generic questions, and it worked, and it was just so much fun. And because of like where I'm working in London, I'm traveling from Manchester to Belfast to London every single week, if not every other week. And when you'd be doing a podcast now, when you get a guest for a podcast, you have to record that. And if it doesn't work for them and they want to change it, then you have to move it forward. You have to edit the podcast. You have to master the podcast. You have to upload the podcast. And trying to do that in between traveling and working full time on
it's difficult.
So I did the podcast up until when I felt that it was good to keep it where it is for now, and then we'll revisit potentially next year.
Like a season 2 almost.
Yeah, there's no rush with this because it started off with no money, no budget, nothing. Like I wasn't paying any of these people to do the podcast.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm going to pay multimillionaires 50 quid to go on a podcast.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. It was only done for a laugh, but it worked. And I just had a feeling that if I produced a podcast talking about lockdown, but also talking about what these people do away from Hollywood in LA or away from playing at Glastonbury or DJing at Creamfields, like what do they actually do? And it just worked and it fell together. And I think because the premise of the first podcast was famous people from Northern Ireland, but then I started to run out of famous people from Northern Ireland.
Yeah,
so then,
the branch.
Yeah. So then I had to think a bit wider and widen the net. But it was something that I'm immensely proud of and something that I took a risk with, put my name on, and it worked. And people are still talking about it, nearly 2 years later.
You should be proud of it. It's a very, very good podcast. And for anyone that hasn't listened, I genuinely think it's worth a listen. So make sure to check it out. Would you like to say the name again for anyone that hasn't listened to the podcast?
The first podcast was called The Lockdown with Phil Reynolds. And the second podcast is called Celebs and the Average Joe. So essentially, I dip into the world of celebrityisms and talk to them about the most random stuff, have the crack, and they go off on their merry way. Pretty much.
It's definitely worth a listen. 100%. Everyone should check it out after listening to this. Now, is there anything you would like to promote before we wrap this up?
Not really, mate. Not really.
Okay.
Has anybody got any free Man United tickets they'd like to give me? Would be
me too. We can go to a game.
No, mate. It's been really good fun. Thanks for inviting me on, and
no problem. Thank
wishing
you
you
for
all
coming
the best with the success of the new venture. Fair play to you.
And I wish you the best for continuing on your career, and I hope it goes further than what it already has.
Thanks, mate, and hopefully 2022 is a better year for you and for all the rest of us.
Exactly. Fingers crossed. Now, next week, we will be back with Adam, just chatting some amount of rubbish as we do. So I hope you all enjoyed, and we'll see you next week.